So, my dear Reverend Fathers, my dear Christians of Limbe and Bota Deanery, especially those of Our Lady of Lourdes Parish here in Gardens. It is a great pleasure for me to be present in your midst this morning for this catechetical session. We have been moving around from parish to parish in order to give the Christians the opportunity to deepen their knowledge of the Catholic Church through the different topics that we have been treating. And of course, we started this time around Gemer, and we spoke about Christ faithful. Last week we were in Bota, Holy Trinity Parish Bota, and we spoke about the formation of clerics. Those who express the desire that they want to become clerics. How is their formation supposed to be? And last week we took time to explain about the minor seminaries, about the major seminaries, about all what takes place as far as formation is concerned. And we had mentioned that when you are in the third year of theology, you apply at the beginning of the year. If the bishop accepts, they make the seminarian an acolyte. And as an acolyte, it means that you are an official altar boy in the church. Not these gentlemen and ladies who just climb the altar and they are serving at Mass when they have not been installed. They are just sitting in for the real people. And when you are made acolyte and you are serving and assisting the deacons and the priests, by the month of April, there's an application that is done by the deacons, and that application, by those who want to be deacons, and that application is sent to the bishop. And if the seminary formators recommend that the acolyte can become a deacon, then the bishop now will write to the Christian faithful indicating that the said acolyte has indicated his intention to be ordained as a deacon. And the banns will be called on 3 successive Sundays. Why are those banns called? They are called because the Christian community also has a duty and a responsibility to assist in the formation of these young men. And throughout their years in the seminary, they have been serving in different communities. And normally when the banns are called, I see some people start clapping. No. The banns are called, it's a procedure of inquiry. And they are finding out from the people of God that this person who has applied, is it all right for the bishop to ordain that person, or there is something that maybe we don't know about and that the Christians know, that they can confidentially tell the parish priest or tell the bishop about the candidate. So it's a process of investigation. And if the bishop ends up getting favorable recommendation letters from the priests where these acolytes have been serving and everything being equal, the bishop decides to ordain the acolytes now to be deacons. When you are ordained a deacon, you become a cleric. When you are ordained a deacon, you become a cleric. So, when we talk about clerics, the topic we are going to talk about today is about the enrollment or the incardination of clerics and their rights and obligations. Now, when we talk about incardination, as I have mentioned, it is through incardination that a candidate becomes a member of the clerical family in a particular church. And the church mentions that you can be incardinated into a diocese. A diocese is run by a bishop. You can be incardinated into a society of apostolic life. You can be incardinated in a religious congregation. And also in what we call a personal prelature, which doesn't exist as far as our country is concerned. And what does this mean? To make it maybe concrete for us. If the deacons who are supposed to be ordained are deacons who want to work in the Diocese of Boya, then during the time of the ordination, they are incardinated into the Diocese of Boya. And you see that when the bishop, of course, will be telling them about the whole aspect of obedience. Calls their name and say, do you promise respect and obedience to me and my successors? And the candidates say, I do. If the candidate, for instance, the Bishop of Kumba is impeded and he cannot ordain in Kumba, and he invites the Bishop of Boya to come to Kumba to do the ordinations of his deacons, then the Bishop of Boya, who is in Kumba to do the ordinations, will say, do you promise respect and obedience to Bishop Agapitu's Fon, Bishop of the Diocese of Kumba, and his successors? If the candidate is coming from a religious community, do you promise respect and obedience to your legitimate superior and his successors? So I am trying to make a distinction between a candidate that is incardinated into the Diocese of Boya and a candidate that is, incardinated in a congregation of consecrated life or a society of apostolic life. And the church is talking about incardination because in the Middle Ages, of course, there were situations where priests were ordained and they did not belong to any diocese. That can bring a lot of chaos. So, before you are ordained a cleric, there must be a bishop who is ordaining you, or who has asked that you should be ordained to work for him. At the same time, before you become a cleric, there must be a superior of a congregation that has asked that you be ordained so that you work for that congregation. So you are incardinated either in the diocese or you are incardinated in a clerical institute of consecrated life or a clerical society of apostolic life. So, when we talk about incardination, it takes place during the diaconate ordination. It is during the diaconate ordination that incardination takes place. Now, when you are incardinated, it is like you are married to a diocese. And the bishop of that diocese becomes the person that is responsible as far as your ministry is concerned. When you have been incardinated, it means that you work for that diocese. But the church also gives opportunity that somebody who has been incardinated and is working in a particular diocese, if for one reason or the other, that person thinks that he cannot work again in that diocese, the church says that that person can be excardinated. So there's what we call incardination, getting into a diocese or a clerical institute of consecrated persons or a clerical society of apostolic life. Then at the same time, if you don't want, for whatever reason, you think that after being incardinated into this particular diocese or this religious institute, you want to work but in another area, then you have to be excardinated. And to be excardinated, it means that you must have seen a bishop who is ready to take you to work with. And that bishop must accept that he wants you to come to his diocese. And of course, the person who is releasing you, let me just be concrete with examples. Take for instance that you are incardinated in the diocese of Boya. Then you have been serving after your diaconal ordination, you have your priestly ordination, you are working in the diocese of Boya, and for one reason or the other, you think that you prefer to work in the diocese of Mamfe. If you make the bishop of Boya to know that, he will ask you to go and meet the bishop of Mamfe and talk with him. If he talks with the bishop of Mamfe, and the bishop of Mamfe thinks that there is a need to have you into his diocese, and then he will let you know. If he thinks that there is no need to have you in his diocese, he will not take you. And if he decides that he needs to take you, then of course, he will write to the bishop of Boya and say, this your candidate, this priest wants to belong to the diocese of Mamfe. You know, I have a need to have him because of the shortage of priests and all the rest. There may be different needs. And then from there, what will happen then? If he writes to the bishop, and he will also find out whether, can I know more about this priest? Then the bishop too will give a report about the priest who wants to come to his diocese. A confidential report written to the bishop. And of course, the bishop is going to study that report, and if the two bishops are agreed that this can take place, then what happens? A letter of excardination is written by the bishop of Boya for that priest, and the bishop of Mamfe writes to immediately the letter of incardination into the diocese of Mamfe. And they must be done simultaneously, because the church do not want us to have what we call wandering priests. They call it in another language acephalous priests. Priests who don't have a bishop. Priests who don't have any superior. So it is important for us to note the possibility of incardination and excardination. There is also another situation that the bishop, the priest, may approach the bishop and tell him that he feels that he should go and work in the diocese of Mamfe. I will end with Mamfe and Boya. And the bishop said, okay, go there, go and work there. If he goes and works in the diocese of Mamfe, then after some time, he thinks that he should remain in the diocese of Mamfe. Then what he needs to do is that after 5 years, he needs to write to his bishop and tell his bishop that I came here to help out. Then I have decided that maybe since Boya is very cold, and I came here because Mamfe was very hot, and the climate favors me because of my health, I think I would like to remain in Mamfe and work there. He writes to his bishop, the bishop in Boya and the bishop in Mamfe. If after 4 months, both of the bishops have received his letter and none of the bishops react to the request, automatically he is excardinated from Boya and incardinated into the diocese of Mamfe. Now, it is also important for us to note that the church has always had the intention to send out what we call fide donum priests. They call them priests, they call it fide donum mean gift of faith. In areas that they may have some challenges as far as priests are concerned, because the number of parishes, the number of Christians that are there, they think that they need more priests to help them. They can decide, the bishops can decide and send a priest as a fide donum priest. For instance, the diocese of Boya can send fide donum priests to the diocese of Mamfe. They are going there as fide donum priests. And of course, they are incardinated into the diocese of Boya. And the law says that if they are going there as fide donum priests, the bishop of Boya and the bishop of Mamfe should establish a contract about their stay. They can stay as long as they want. The law of the church does not tell you the specific time you have to stay. But a contract must be established between the two bishops. They may say that, okay, I'm sending my priest to work in Mamfe. He will work for 3 years and come back. He will work for 3 years, renewable once, and come back. So that contract is very important, so that once the contract is established, the priests concerned, they know that they are going out as fide donum priests to work in another diocese. When they work there and the period of their return comes, they come back to their diocese of origin in order to carry on with their pastoral ministry. Now, it is important for us to know that as far as the incardination is concerned, we mention also the possibility of excardination. But the law also makes it very clear that in situations where you have, for instance, a diocesan administrator, the diocesan administrator cannot grant excardination. If he has to do that, it must be after 1 year after the person has made the request, and at the same time, it also must have the approval of the members of the College of Consultors. So which means that if a diocese is vacant, meaning that there is no bishop, and a diocesan administrator is appointed in that diocese, within 1 year, he cannot do excardination. But after 1 year, if there is a case of excardination, then he has to make sure he contacts the members of the College of Consultors for that to happen. The enrollment or the incardination of a cleric, we are now going to move on to look at the obligations and the rights of clerics. The first obligation is that the cleric is supposed to show reverence, respect, and obedience to the Holy Father and to his bishop. Respect, obedience to the Holy Father and his bishop. Secondly, when he is given an assignment to carry out by the bishop, he must carry out that assignment. Again, the cleric has an obligation to see to it that he lives in communion and in union with the other clerics who are assigned to live with him in a particular house, and that they all work for the common good of the church. The cleric also have the obligation to make sure that he assists the lay faithful in carrying out their own mission in the church. There are certain things that are supposed to be done by the lay faithful. The clerics must assist the lay people to carry out their own mission. Then, of course, the clerics are supposed to live a holy life. To live a holy life. If we look at the Second Vatican Ecumenical Council, one of the documents that came out of that council is a dogmatic constitution on the church, Lumen Gentium. Chapter 5 of that document talks about the universal call of all to holiness. And from paragraph 39 to 42 of that document, mention is made about the importance and the necessity of all Christians, all religious, all clerics to live a life of holiness. And at the same time, if you read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, one of the 4 marks of the church is that the church is holy. If you read that section of paragraph 823 to 829, it talks to you a lot about holiness as far as the church is concerned. So the clerics have an obligation to live a holy life. And how do they live holy lives? By making sure that they carry out the different spiritual activities that the church has asked them to carry out. The celebration of the sacrifice of the Mass every day, going to confession when they find themselves in a state of sin, making sure that they pray the liturgy of the hours, the prayers that the church has put in place for them to pray, making sure that they have their monthly recollections, making sure they go for their retreat, making sure that when there is a pilgrimage that is arranged, that they are part of the pilgrimage. Make sure that they create time to read the Bible, the scriptures, making sure that they pray their rosary whenever it is necessary, if not every day. And the other spiritual exercises that they are supposed to carry out in order to make them to be holy. Then the church also says that they have an obligation to observe perfect and perpetual continence for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. That is a vow. We have taken vows of of poverty, of chastity, and of obedience. And they're talking about the obligation of chastity here in the celibate state, that it is an obligation that is incumbent on the clerics, and they do so for the sake of the kingdom of God, to allow themselves to be more available in order to work for the people of God. Then it is also mentioned that they should be prudent, they should be careful in the way they relate with persons whose company may be a danger to their vow of celibacy. If you discover that you are relating with somebody, or you have a friend whose company is already putting your vow of celibacy in danger, you should prudently withdraw so that that should not affect you. Then we are also told that they have to also refrain from participating in associations whose goals are contrary to the obligations proper to the clerical state. Then living together in the community is to be encouraged, and that is why the bishop will always make an effort to see to it that a priest does not live in a parish alone, that he has either another priest living with, a deacon living with, or is with a seminarian. Cases where priests will live alone should actually be rare cases, because maybe sometimes of lack of accommodation or lack of personnel. Then the clerics have an obligation to live a simple lifestyle. When a new model of Prado comes up today, a cleric should not be running to go and buy it. When a new model of phone comes up today, the cleric should not be running to go and buy it. So they are supposed to live a simple lifestyle and avoid anything that will be exaggerated as far as their lifestyle is concerned, since all of that will be vanity. Then the church says that they have an obligation, when people give them gifts, to use that gift for themselves. But at the same time, they can use that gift for the work of the church. They can use that gift for the work of the church. And that is why, if I'm the parish priest of Gardens, and I talk to one of my friends, or my Christian, because we don't have a television in the house, then my friend and my Christian decides to supply us with a television. It's a gift that is given, and that gift, if I'm leaving Gardens tomorrow, I cannot say, no, that was my personal gift, I'll carry it away. So what the church is advising us is that people will give us gifts. When they give us gifts, we should be able to use our gifts not only for ourselves, but also to see how we can help the church, because they are giving us the gift because we are clerics. So if somebody were to give you a parish priest now, say 10,000, and he has to use it for himself, but he discovers that maybe there are 3 bulbs that are blown because of the fluctuation of current, and the bulbs cost 3,000, and out of that is 10,000. He can make a sacrifice to buy those 3 bulbs as his own way of supporting the work of the parish. Then a cleric is not supposed to be absent from his parish for a long period of time without the permission of the bishop. And according to what the church teaches, a cleric has a right to 1 month holidays every year. You have a right to have your holidays for 1 month. So we keep on encouraging ourselves. That is good for us. The bishop is supposed to take 1 month holidays. All the priests are supposed to take 1 month holidays, so that we can also rest and have the power to continue to work. Then the church reminds us that when we are dressing, we should dress as clerics. We should dress as clerics. And dressing as clerics means that we put on the garments that reflects who we are. You see, we put our soutanes, some of us put our Roman collars, some put the Roman collars with a suit. Those are the dresses that we need to put on when we are carrying out our official duties and responsibilities within the course of the day. Then we are supposed to run away from anything that is contrary to our state of life. And we are not supposed to accept positions as far as political powers are concerned. If a bishop or a priest wants to become the head of a political party, it is not accepted. If you go and run for elections and they elect you as the president of the country, they will write you to resign from your state. We are not supposed to do things like that. Then, of course, we should also refrain from certain traditional things that are contrary to our state of life. So you cannot be head of a juju in your village. Without the permission of their bishop or major superior, they are not to assume such responsibilities as managing the goods of lay persons. You have your family or your friend who is a lay person, and he opens a big company and he asks you to be managing it for him. We are not supposed to do that. And you are not supposed to stand as a guarantor, a surety in the bank to sign for somebody to go and take a loan. And you are not supposed to make pledges involving financial commitments on behalf of other people. Then all of us clerics, we have to refrain from starting businesses for our own advantage or for the advantage of others. Which means that a priest cannot decide now to open a business on his own to be selling tomatoes. Open a business on his own to be selling beer. And all the rest. We have to abstain from that. They also have a duty to foster peace and harmony based on justice. And of course, avoid playing any active role in trade unions and politics or to volunteer for the military service. They can be appointed military chaplains, but they cannot volunteer in order to work as military men. These are their obligations. What are their rights? The rights that they have is that offices that are supposed to be occupied by those in sacred orders must be given only to them. Which means that you cannot get an office that is supposed to be given to somebody who has sacred orders and you give that office to somebody who doesn't have the sacred orders. And of course, what are the examples? Parish, to be a parish pastor, to be chaplains in school and hospitals, all those things that are supposed to be carried out as far as the orders is concerned. They have the right to form associations. And in our province, we have the Association of Diocesan Priests. This association is supposed to help the diocesan priests to come together to reflect on their ministry and how they can be able to function and function in a better way. They also have the obligation after their ordination, if the bishop deems it necessary, to send them for further studies in the sacred sciences and any other science that the bishop thinks that it will be for the interest of the diocese. Then, of course, they also have the right to have support, what we call remuneration for the work that they are doing. And that is why it is important that when it comes to each of the local church, depending on our situations and our circumstances, we decide on what to give so that the priest too should not be without food. And I think in each of the dioceses in our province, we have taken measures in order to handle that. And then, of course, they also have the right to form, they do have the right to some of the social assistance so that they can be able to be taken care of as far as health insurance is concerned. Those who have to have a scheme for their old age when they work for us and they are old and tomorrow they are not active again to work. What do we do with them? We must have schemes that at the end of the day they should be able to have some benefit in their retirement. So this said, these are some of the obligations and the rights that the clerics have. And these obligations are given in the universal church, and is in each particular church, each local church, the local ordinary looks at them and sees how to bring out some concrete points and proposals and ideas that can be able to make the clerics to work and to work in a better way.